On one particular night, with half I give attention to my instructor and the other half to the incessant thoughts that had in relation to faith and religion, I began to write down my thoughts and questions. There was an African Christian sister who had an interracial marriage sitting on my left. She knew that she was proud to be a Christian and that it gave her the same joy that I used to have. I gave her the piece of paper for her to try to answer. In a break she tried to answer the questions about the Trinity, sin, and the atonement, but for some reason I knew the precepts she had talked about, but now did not understand. The Muslim quiet and studious, she was sitting behind the Christian girl. I passed her the same note. To my surprise, she wrote answers that were very clear and concrete. Her body language was subtle. I wasn't writing frantically trying to convert me to her faith, while the other sister told me Fez. He wrote some sites that I could visit that had more explanations. What had just happened? Why did I ask the Muslim? It was over to sabotage my entire identity again? With the clear answers she provided, if I were a minister, how I could share the gospel with and convert her. As she was from another country, she had no concept of atonement or of a triune God. At home I started writing articles, and when my husband had left for work, I visited websites about Islam. The most of the sites had consistent information. The ones that seemed strange, calling the Salat a prayer of contact, for example, were obviously not what I was looking for. Praise be to Allah, looking back, it was only me in search for these answers without anyone to interpret what I was reading, and I was able to deciphering what Islam was not. I investigated everything I could find. I became obsessed with religion and the search for what I felt was right. I arrived at the conclusion that there had to be only one God. I considered atheism, but the natural world, the human body, the force within us that makes us who we are, they were too intricate to be some cosmic coincidence or accident. I was restricted to Judaism or Islam. Meanwhile, while the semesters passed, my personal life began to unravel. I have presented the findings that I had about Islam to my husband. He didn't like it at all. He didn't speak with me for 2 days. When he was ready to speak, he said he didn't understand where all this came from or why I wanted to spend so much time at university or with friends from the university. With his utter disapproval and knowledge of that he would not convert, he studied in secret. With 2 children, a pressure constant in my heart and an instinctive feeling about the issues at hand, I had to make some decisions. One night I was online witnessing a person making the Shahada, or declaration of faith. I started to cry uncontrollably, and to this day I still don't know why, nor can I explain what I was feeling it. A few days later I made mine completely alone. Until I did it on 3 different occasions to be sure. During my search there were many opinions regarding religion and faith. Most of the people were atheists, agnostics or apostates from Islam who had seen injustices or experienced any difficulty that they attributed to God. I made sure I didn't do that. I made sure to consider all the arguments, to retract my blasphemous claims to God when I was angry with him, and trusted that any act one committed based on in some sense of faith, it was none of God's fault. I heard arguments about how people of little faith are more likely to have someone capable of convert them. I don't believe that this was my case. I prefer to adopt the position that I was always in search of what God wanted me to do. Did you want these bodily actions of worship? The higher the better? Did he intend for us to segregate ourselves by color or culture? Despite having depression, clinical and questions, I felt that I owed it to myself to make the most important decision. Coherent, firm and clear. I would love to say that life has become easier, that there were butterflies and rainbows and we lived happily ever after, but it wasn't the case. My marriage is over, and of course, I am the only Muslim in the family. Have difficulties with prayers, since my concept of worship was completely different. Many reverts reveal how they have gained much peace through prayer or how they felt this pressure in their hearts, but that was a battle for me. My personal conflicts as a Muslim deal with culture versus faith and the feeling of simply standing out completely alone in hijab, in name of my beliefs. However, the most beautiful thing for me after me becoming Muslim is that I finally had my prayers and questions answered. This brings me a lot of peace and makes my struggle almost nothing, compared to the benefits I gained.